Still running errands, huh? Natalie heard the mocking voice and flinched. A woman was standing by the reception area, unfamiliar at first glance, but the voice and the smug smile were painfully familiar. It was her former classmate, the one who had made Natalie's school years a daily challenge. Michelle. No doubt about it. Time had changed her, but not enough to mask who she really was. Natalie felt old anxiety bubble up from deep inside. Her heart raced, and her fingers trembled as they clutched the folder. Michelle scanned Natalie from head to toe. She must have recognized her but assumed she was just a regular office assistant. Natalie was dressed elegantly, though modestly, a soft light gray suit, a delicate silver chain around her neck. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed authority. And just moments earlier, Natalie had picked up a pen from the floor and tidied up a desk. From the outside, it probably looked like she was running errands. Just like in school. That's exactly the kind of thing Michelle used to mock her for. Now, with narrowed eyes, she threw out the same old jab. Natalie froze. Her cheeks flushed, just like they used to back then, when she'd rushed to follow some mean-spirited command, humiliated, head down. Suddenly, the past surged back. The buzz of the school hallway, sunlight pouring through tall windows, two girls by the blackboard. One smirking, calling over the quiet, skinny A student. The other dropping a pile of notebooks on purpose. "Come on, smarty pants, pick it up," echoed a voice from memory, and a chill ran down Natalie's spine. Little Natalie, on shaky legs, bending down to gather the scattered notebooks, laughter all around her. Back then, she thought that would be her whole life, forever the target, only good for cleaning up someone else's mess or fetching chalk. "Hey, did you recognize me, or have you forgotten your old school friends?" Michelle raised an eyebrow as the silence dragged on. There was condescension in her voice. She was clearly enjoying this, thinking she'd stumbled on her old classmate in the same submissive role. She went on. "Natalie, you've changed, for sure. I didn't even recognize you at first. I remember you were a straight A student. And look where they got you, cleaning someone else's desk." Michelle scoffed, glancing around the reception like she was pointing out Natalie's natural place. Natalie took a slow breath, trying to keep her composure. "Stay calm. Don't let her see she hit a nerve," she told herself, straightening her shoulders. The sting of shame and anger gave way to something else, dignity. She wasn't that scared little girl anymore. Life had changed. And now fate had brought her the perfect moment to prove it. "Hello, Michelle," Natalie said evenly, meeting her eyes with a soft smile. "You're right, it's been a while. I didn't recognize you at first either." Michelle blinked, caught off guard. She had expected the same flustered, submissive reaction. But instead, a confident woman stood before her, calm and composed. Still, Michelle recovered quickly and waved it off with a smirk. "Yeah, a while indeed. Who would have thought? Anyway, honey, I'm here for an interview. Can you tell me where the director's office is?" She glanced at her watch, showing she had time, but also that she didn't like to wait. Her high heel tapped impatiently on the marble floor. Of course, Natalie nodded, and a faint spark lit up in her eyes, one Michelle didn't catch. "Have a seat, please." She gestured to the couch by the wall. "I'll check and take you there." Michelle sat, crossing her legs and adjusting her skirt. Inside, she was still gloating. What a coincidence, she thought. So good to see Miss Perfect stuck in some assistant job. Guess those straight A's didn't help much. She pulled a compact mirror from her bag, catching Natalie's reflection as she stepped over to the secretary's desk. Michelle couldn't resist another jab. "Don't take too long, Natalie. I still have to impress the director," she said, her tone full of implied superiority, like she was saying, "Try not to mess this up. I'm important." Natalie glanced at her out of the corner of her eye. Her heart was calm now. The old shame had faded, replaced with something almost like curiosity. What would happen next? She leaned in and quietly spoke to the secretary, who had come over to pass a message from the marketing director. He was ready for the candidate. Natalie nodded and said softly, "Valentina, please let him know I'll be conducting the interview myself." The secretary nodded silently, barely hiding a smile. She understood from the conversation who this arrogant guest really was. Michelle had come to interview for the head of marketing position at a company owned by none other than Natalie, and had no idea. While her former classmate casually powdered her nose and threw dismissive glances around, Natalie gave herself a moment to fully calm down. She walked over to the window, trying to steady her breath. Outside, the summer sun cast a golden glow on the treetops. Inside, the meeting room was quiet and cool thanks to the AC. Natalie ran her hand along the smooth surface of the table. Her thoughts briefly drifted back in time. Many years had passed since that unforgettable scene with the scattered notebooks. Back then, picking up someone else's books at the front of the class, while Michelle and her clique mockingly clapped, Natalie had felt the burn of humiliation on her ears. Her throat had tightened, and all she wanted was to disappear. But her homeroom teacher had been there, helping her gather the notebooks and gently whispering not to pay attention to the cruelty. "Time will put everything in its place," she'd said. Those words took root deep inside Natalie's heart. Years went by. Natalie kept studying, graduated college with honors. It wasn't easy. Her parents had gotten sick, and she had to juggle evening shifts with her coursework. She cleaned at a bakery, hauled heavy sacks of flour, took any job she could to pay for her parents' treatment and keep her dream alive. Sometimes the exhaustion made her dizzy, but she kept going, repeating to herself, "I'll make it. I can do this." Every dollar earned and every textbook page read brought her one step closer to a better life. Eventually, with years of knowledge and hard work behind her, Natalie opened her own pastry workshop at 35. Then came a coffee shop. Then a small chain of cafes across Austin and nearby towns. She had her own company now, a well-known name in the industry, and dozens of employees. Of course, she looked different too. The shy little girl had grown into a poised, confident woman. But deep inside, a flicker of that humiliated Natalie still lingered, the one no one took seriously. And now, a piece of that past was standing right outside her office. Natalie took several deep breaths. A warm ray of sunlight touched her palm, chasing away the chill of old memories. Well then, showtime, she thought, squaring her shoulders. Her reflection in the window looked calm, with a faint smile. Only her widened pupils betrayed her nerves. But she was ready. She walked back to reception. "Michelle, this way, please," she said politely, opening the door to the meeting room. Her former classmate quickly stood up, putting her compact away. She followed Natalie without suspecting a thing. Once inside, Natalie gestured toward the chair by the table. Michelle looked around, clearly expecting to see the company director. But the room was empty except for them. "Where's the director?" she mumbled, frowning. "Are they coming?" Natalie gave a composed smile. "Allow me to introduce myself. Natalie Harrison, CEO." Michelle's breathing quickened. Her eyes jumped from the confident woman in front of her to the nameplate on the desk, Natalie Harrison, Chief Executive Officer. Her cheeks flushed. The realization hit hard. That's why the secretary had said her name. Her classmate wasn't just some assistant, she owned the company. "Natalie. I mean..." "Miss Harrison," Michelle stammered, her voice completely changed. The arrogance was gone. "You're the director? I had no idea." She fell silent, unsure where to look. Her hand nervously smoothed a strand of dyed blonde hair. Her face turned red. She looked ready to sink into the floor. The room filled with an awkward silence, broken only by the faint sound of traffic outside the window. A chill crept down Michelle's spine, and her palms grew sweaty. She struggled to find words. In her mind, flashes of their school days returned. The very memories she thought were long gone. There she was, ordering Natalie to fetch sandwiches from the cafeteria. tripping her near the chalkboard. Back then, Michelle hadn't thought about the consequences. She just boosted her ego at the expense of the smart girl. And now, that quiet girl was sitting across from her, calm, composed, and holding all the power. And in her eyes, there was no spite, only dignity. Now it was Michelle who felt the lump rise in her throat, the same one Natalie must have swallowed countless times. Was this karma's cruel joke? After months of unemployment, this job had felt like a lifeline. And she'd walked straight into a ghost from her past. What an idiot I am, she thought. I really messed this up. Natalie stayed silent for a while, giving Michelle a chance to process everything. Calmly, she spread out the applicant's resume in front of her and glanced over it. Michelle Smith. Age, 46. A string of jobs at various retail companies. Never stayed in one place for long. So that's how things had gone. When she looked up, she saw the pride had drained from Michelle's face. She sat stiffly, clearly on edge, nervously fidgeting with the edge of her handbag. To break the heavy pause, Natalie was the first to speak. Well, Miss Smith, why don't you tell me a little about yourself and what made you interested in this position? Her tone was formal but gentle, no sarcasm. Still, Michelle flinched, as if she'd been slapped. She quickly nodded. Of course, she said, swallowing hard and trying to compose herself. I've worked in sales and marketing for many years, and your company's got a strong reputation. I thought I'd take a shot. She coughed slightly, aware of how flat her words sounded. Under Natalie's polite but penetrating gaze, her usual confidence slipped away. Michelle began listing her experience, trying her best to come across as professional. But her voice kept catching, especially when she brought up teamwork. Her eyes met Natalie's, and she faltered. No doubt remembering how teamwork had looked back in school, when her version of it was bullying the quiet girl. Her cheeks flushed with shame. Natalie listened without interrupting. She nodded occasionally, asked a few questions, treating Michelle like any other applicant, as if there were no history between them. Only the pressure of her nails digging into her palms beneath the table betrayed how tense she really was. It wasn't easy to keep calm. Old wounds still burned somewhere deep. But as she watched Michelle struggling to make a good impression, Natalie started to see things differently. This wasn't some terrifying schoolyard tyrant in front of her. It was just a woman. Flawed, vulnerable, and clearly desperate for a job. Natalie noticed the fatigue on Michelle's face. Life hadn't been easy on her either. Suddenly, she felt a flicker of sympathy for the woman who'd once made her life hell. Maybe people really do change. Michelle was finishing up her story about her last job, doing her best to hide the tremor in her voice. Unfortunately, the company shut down during the crisis, and I was let go. But I'm a fast learner, and I've got a lot of energy, she added with a strained smile. Natalie met her eyes. There was a quiet, pleading look in Michelle's. The last few months had clearly knocked the arrogance out of her, except maybe for that lingering habit of preying on the weak. But even that seemed mostly gone now. Michelle finally exhaled, her shoulders slumping. Natalie, she said quietly, eyes fixed on the edge of the table, Miss Harrison, I need to apologize. The words came hard. I was awful to you back in school. I don't even know why. It's been so many years, but I still feel ashamed. She looked up, barely able to hold back tears. I'm sorry. Really. You were always a kind girl. You didn't deserve any of it. Silence fell. Natalie hadn't expected such a direct apology and took a moment to gather her thoughts. Her heart was full of conflicting emotions. On one hand, the girl who had tormented her was now sitting right there. It would be so easy to lash out, to finally say all the things she'd bottled up for years. To kick Michelle out, let her feel what it was like to be small. But would that actually make her feel better? If she gave in to that vengeful impulse, wouldn't she be sinking to the same petty level Michelle had once lived at? A crow shrieked sharply outside the window, breaking the silence like a jolt. Natalie turned back to Michelle. She was sitting hunched over, eyes down, bracing herself for whatever came next. Natalie took a quiet breath and said, "Michelle, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it." She folded her hands on the table, trying to meet Michelle's eyes. "What happened in school? Well, that was a long time ago. We're not those girls anymore." Michelle nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Natalie's. A small tear slid down her cheek, maybe from tension, maybe from shame. "I'm really glad you acknowledged it and apologized," Natalie continued gently. "Honestly, this whole situation is unexpected. And, let's face it, a bit surreal." She allowed herself a gentle, good-natured smile. "Who would have thought, right?" Michelle gave a faint, sad smile in return. "Yeah. I definitely didn't see this coming." Natalie's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Now, back to the position. Based on your resume, you seem to be a decent specialist. And honestly, if we didn't have this history, I would have considered your application like any other. But," she paused, gathering the strength to say something that wasn't easy, "knowing our past, I have to ask myself, can I truly trust you to lead a department? And to be honest, your behavior before you realized who I was wasn't exactly professional." Michelle paled. "I understand," she whispered. Natalie shook her head slightly. "It's not really about old wounds. Believe me, I moved on from that a long time ago. It's more about character. In this company, we value mutual respect. I built this team on that foundation. Hiring someone who used to humiliate others, and who, frankly, still seemed to carry some of that attitude, it's a difficult decision for me." Michelle lowered her head. She had nothing to say. Natalie's words were fair. Natalie's voice softened. "Maybe people do change. I believe you're truly sorry for what happened. But right now, I think it's best we don't mix work and personal history." She stood, signaling that the interview was over. Michelle rose too, quickly brushing a tear from her lashes. Her voice trembled. "Thank you for listening. And I'm sorry again, Miss Harrison." Natalie nodded. They shook hands. Michelle's hand was cold and slightly shaking. She turned and walked quickly toward the door, trying not to break down in front of everyone. At the threshold, she paused and glanced back. "You've done amazing," she said quietly, looking at Natalie with a mix of respect and regret. "I really am happy things turned out so well for you." Natalie didn't have time to respond, and didn't need to. A moment later, Michelle disappeared down the hallway. The door closed softly behind her. In the quiet of the meeting room, Natalie sank back into her chair. "Thank you, life, for the lessons," she thought, feeling a warm sense of gratitude swell in her chest. "And for proving that kindness always wins in the end." She stood up, ready to get back to work. She could already hear her colleagues moving through the corridor. Another regular workday was in full swing. Natalie walked confidently back to her office. The smell of fresh brewed coffee in reception somehow felt especially comforting today. Today was the day the past finally let her go, leaving behind only wisdom and peace. If this story moved you, share it with someone close. Let it be a reminder of how important it is to stay human, kind, empathetic, and grateful. Hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And drop a comment to let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear.